Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
My name is James Robson, and I'm here representing Canada Action. We're a pro-resource, pro-energy, pro-Canada non-for-profit. We're probably more recognizable by our I Love Oil and Gas logo than anything else. And I'm really absolutely thrilled to be here today. I would like to thank the organizers for not simply just the invitation, but also asking me to serve as the Master of Ceremonies. It's a real honor. I understand that Moosomin is a pipeline town. It's bordered by two major lines. You have Line 3 and the Trans-Canada Main Line. But Moosomin and the surrounding area is also blessed by agriculture, oil and gas, and potash. It's a brilliant example of what our natural resource sector provides Canadians, and I can't think of a better place that's better suited to hold a rally like this. It is this natural resource sector that makes Canada strong. And when it flourishes, all Canadians benefit. But unfortunately, we're losing out. Global oil demand is growing, and Canadians are not benefiting. Our lack of market access has woefully discounted our most important export. To put this into perspective, Desjardins has estimated that Canada will have provided the United States with $92 billion worth of oil discounts between the years 2008 into 2020. And since 2012, we have spent over $120 billion importing oil. Much of this oil has come from regimes that do not share our same human rights standards or values in regards to the environment. To further compound matters, the regulatory environment has been worsened by poor policy. Bills C-69 and C-48 have been criticized by First Nations, industry, and provincial governments. Former Liberal MP Martha Hall Finlay has called for it to be scrapped and redrafted. I truly do wish that the federal government had accepted the invitation to attend, and perhaps they could have explained to all of us as to why these bills are anything more than opposition to our resource sector. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce a few dignitaries who aren't speaking, but they're here with us today. We have Manitoba MLA Don Pinuak from the Verdun riding. Rick Wojcik, Swan River riding. Greg Nesbitt, Riding Mountain riding. Dan Mazier, CPC candidate for Dauphin Minnedosa riding. And from Saskatchewan, we have Dan Doutremont for the Cannington riding. Warren Kading from Melville Salcoats riding. Hugh Nerling from Kelvington Wadena riding. And Warren Steinley, CDC candidate for Regina Leuven riding and sitting MLA for Walsh Acres riding. As well as Dan Moffat, Reeve of the Rural Municipality of Moosomin. And last but not least, Frances McCarthy, Dan McCarthy's grandmother, who is in her 100th year. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our first speaker today, Monty Bowers. Monty is the president and CEO of Corex Resources. Monty is a member of the Board of Governors for the Explorers and Producers Association of Canada. He was born, raised, and educated in Saskatchewan and has 40-plus years of oil and gas experience, with most of this being in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Monty also would like you to know that he bleeds green.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Explorers and Producers Association of Canada, EPAC, thank you for the opportunity to speak and share the stage with political leaders from across Canada. EPAC represents 120 member companies, the entrepreneurs of our industry, many of whom have grown their operations from nothing to major oil and gas companies, generating significant employment and economic benefit for all Canadians. Why do I like oil and gas? The truth is, oil and gas is why we have the quality of life we enjoy as Canadians today. In fact, it's why the developed nations of the world have the quality of life they have. Oil and gas lifts people out of poverty, improves quality of life, extends life expectancies, and reduces air pollution-related deaths significantly relative to other sources of energy. It is the fuel that gets medicine and food to people in need around the world. It fueled the plane I flew on to get to Regina, the rental car I drove to Moosomin, and actually is a major component of the highway that I was driving on as I was getting here. And I suspect it is probably heating this building in one form or another. Thank you, oil and gas. It is an integral part of just about everything we use in our society. Including cell phones and computers. How many actually, just for a record, anyone got a cell phone with them? All right, hold it up. It is an integral part of just about everything we use in our society, and cell phones and computers. How many folks would give those up? Stop driving cars, stop traveling, stop helping Canadians, and stop lifting people out of poverty. As a young Canadian, I proudly traveled the world with the Canadian flag stitched on my back. What have we come to when a major Canadian company drops the Canada from their name, as they will be investing more money outside of Canada? Let's be honest. It's not a bad thing for companies to grow in Canada, but it is not a good thing when it is partially due to the inability to get projects approved in Canada and deploy the capital here. I also strongly believe without the Canada in their name, it will be easier for them to attract investment. Very, very sad. I would like to remind everyone here that the energy industry has been the single biggest wealth generator in Canada since Confederation. All one need do is look at the historical transfer payments to understand how much our industry has benefited all Canadians, and it will continue to do so within the right fiscal and regulatory environments in the future. The industry does not need loan guarantees from the federal government. We simply need to get our product to new markets to the benefit of all Canadians. Let's also remember the Canadian oil and gas industry operates within the most stringent regulatory and environmental regulations in the world. And as Canadian producers, we are proud to be those leaders. When we continue to import oil from countries with poor regulatory and environmental standards, human violations, while limiting our ability to get our oil to Canadian and international markets other than the US, something is fundamentally wrong. I was driving to work recently in Calgary and was passed by a Hummer with BC plates and a sticker that said, "Stop Trans Mountain." I just shook my head at the hypocrisy of the driver. It is easy to point the finger at the oil and gas industry, but folks, we need to look in the mirror. To have any material impact, end users have to change their lifestyles. Yes, we as Canadians are heavy energy users per capita, but there's a reason. We're a big country, not densely populated, and look outside, it's cold here. It takes a lot to heat it. Okay? We as Canadians need to change our lives. We as Canadians should do everything we can to consume less oil and gas in this industry we do. But the reality is we need all sources of energy, as the alternative sources currently available simply cannot supply Canada nor the world with the energy it will need for decades to come. When reasonable timeframes to approve projects and fair fiscal regimes are in place, the oil and gas industry and Canadians thrive. Unfortunately, that is not the case today. Our industry faces strong headwinds due to lack of pipeline egress, resulting in no new capital investment, loss of jobs. I just came in from Calgary. 1 in 4 office towers are empty. And that extends across all of Western Canada, and in fact extends across the country because we employ a lot of folks from across this entire country. Lower realized commodity prices, increasing regulatory burdens, ever-changing approval processes, and goalposts that are constantly moving to get anything approved. And the one that burns me the most, foreign interests funding initiatives under the guise of environmental issues through special interest groups attempting to shut down a critical Canadian industry. Even the Governor of Washington State is weighing in on a Canadian issue. I ask you, should he have standing on a Canadian decision? I encourage you to Google Vivian Krause to understand how these dynamics are working. The end result is no progress for years. No new pipelines have been built to either Canadian tidewater, while our neighbors south of the border increase production, back out Canadian production, have improved and built counting, still not built. Canada is now considered too high a risk for foreign investment in oil and gas, and capital investment has left our industry. When did we stop being a nation that through reasonable consultation will do what is in the national interest and respect what the majority of Canadians want in a timely manner? Bill C-69 in its current form infringes on provincial jurisdictions and imposes a standard that may lead to the end of all future major projects affecting good-paying jobs for all Canadians. Imagine for a moment applying standards to the Trans-Canada Highway or the Canadian National Railway. Do you really think they'd be built under those standards today? I don't think so. If we can't nation build and get projects like pipelines built that benefit all Canadians utilizing current regulations, what will happen to future projects captured under Bill C-69? If we can simply return to nation building and put our local interests aside, doing projects that are in the national interest, and get them done in reasonable timeframes, measured in a few years, not 5 years, not 10 years, and counting, we can once again become the vibrant industry and country the world wants to invest in. The future is bright with the right leadership at the helm. I highly recommend you look up Chris Lubicki, S-L-U-B-I-C-K-I, on YouTube. He has prepared an excellent video presentation that covers the issues far more eloquently and in far more detail than I did today. Come on, Canada, build those pipelines.
Thank you, Monty. Very well done. I would like to second what Monty said. Chris Lubicki does an absolutely fantastic presentation. Check it out, it's on YouTube. Our next speaker I'd like to invite up is Don Switzer. He's the Chief Operations Officer with Brandt Industry.
Great, thanks James, and thanks for being the MC today. And importantly, thanks for all the important things that Canada Action does to provide platforms like this to deliver such a positive message. I think whenever Canada Action shows up and gives a platform to educate people across Canada, I think it's a very powerful thing. So James, thanks for all the work that you do every day. I wanted to do a quick shout out to some Brandt alumni, Dan and Olga McCarthy. What a great way to orient your new building to the neighborhood and to the country. So Dan and Olga, if this is your opening ceremonies, congratulations on hosting this event, and thanks so much for hosting it. And Sink Harrison, thanks for letting Brandt be part of the podium today, and congratulations on doing a great job on organizing this entire event. There was a lot of moving parts, and I think it's amazing. If you measure success based on how many people you get out on a family day weekend in Moosomin, I'd say that this is a highly successful event. So congratulations on organizing this. It's great. So last night we had dinner at the Red Barn, which was fantastic. Thanks, Sink, for dinner at the Red Barn. And we were talking about all the things that we've got to talk about these days. We've got Bill C-48. We've got Bill C-69 to talk about, we got carbon tax to talk about, and we got pipelines to talk about. So there's a lot of things to talk about in today's environment. What I want to talk about today, though, is the important role that oil and gas and pipelines in particular play for Brandt, the Brandt group of companies. So if you give me 5 or 6 minutes, I'm going to get through the important role that everybody plays in terms of making this successful for Brandt. So when you think about Brandt Group of Companies, we're a privately held company based out of Regina, Saskatchewan. We employ about 2,500 people, just north of 2,500 people. And our owners are born and raised, and they've spent their entire livelihood in the province of Saskatchewan and Regina. So Gavin and Sean Semple have their livelihood in their lives invested in this business, invested in this province, and invested in this country. And it's an amazing thing what they've been able to do for a Saskatchewan company, employing 2,500 people across the U.S. and Canada. So it really is a great story. But when you think about the Brandt Group of Companies, there's kind of two sides to it at a high level. There's the manufacturing side, and the manufacturing side produces products. And there's the distribution side, and the distribution side sells products. So when you think about the manufacturing side of it, when you drove in, who all noticed that truck in the trailer with the 1050 side boom on it? Everybody notice the big side boom? Okay, that's the story I want to tell, or use to tell, about the manufacturing side of it. There's 3 pieces to that rig that you saw. The first piece is the Kenworth truck. And that Kenworth truck is made at our plant in Nisku, Alberta. We just bought a company called CamX back in November. And what they do is they take trucks and they rig them out for the oil fields. And that truck was put together in Nisku. It's a Kenworth truck. And in that plant in Nisku, we employ just north of 70 people in that plant. So that's 70 people that help make that truck. The trailer that carries the side boom, although that's not our trailer, we're just on the early days of manufacturing our own heavy haul trailers. And the trailer, our prototype, is on its way up to Fort Mac with a big water tank on it. So we would have loved to have our trailer here, but it's busy carrying things around the countryside and getting tested out. But we're going to be manufacturing our own 65-ton heavy haul trailer, and that's going to be made in our plant in Saskatoon. In that plant, yeah. Thank you. And that plant employs 200 people at this moment in time, and it's a fairly new plant. We're only a year and a half or so into it, so we're growing it, and it's going to build not only the 65-ton trailer, but also a 55-ton heavy haul trailer. And then the third piece of that rig you saw was the side boom. That's kind of the feature creature, right? And that side boom is made at our plant in Regina. And in that plant, we employ over 550 people. And that's actually where Dan and Olga, I'm sure that Dan and Olga had something to do with that machine. I'm not sure what parts, but before they started iJack, they worked for Brandt out of that factory that produces that side boom. And so when you put all three of those pieces together, the key thing is that side boom. There's only one reason side booms are built: to put pipeline in the ground. That's the only reason side booms are built. And if we don't put pipelines in, we don't need side booms. And if we don't need side booms, we don't need that trailer. And if we don't need that trailer, we don't need the tractor to pull it. So those three pieces are absolutely integral. And when you add up those three pieces, it's over 800 people that are employed that help build that rig that you drove by. So it's very important to Brandt, it's very important to the province from an employment standpoint, and it's very important to the industry. When you think about those three pieces, the jobs that it creates are everything from designers, product planners, engineers, welders, fabricators. There's a whole bunch of jobs that are created because of our ability to manufacture those three pieces alone. And then, of course, the management teams, the finance, the accounting, and the HR, the developments people. There's a whole bunch of jobs that are created. For every job that we create, there's 4 more created within the province of Saskatchewan, spin-off jobs that are created. So when you take those 800 that manufacture those three things and multiply that by 4, and that's how many jobs are created because of our ability to do that. So that's the distribution side of it, just a small example of how important the oil and gas and pipeline in particular is to Brandt. The other side of our business is distribution, and we're known as the world's largest John Deere dealer. The world's largest John Deere dealer, and we have operations from Vancouver Island to Prince Edward Island. We have 27 branch locations, and within those branch locations we employ over 1,200 people. And those 1,200 people do amazing things. They do amazing things like you guys do amazing things. Our technicians are out in the cold, like you guys are out in the cold, when it's a minus 30 degree today. If something breaks, they're out there fixing it. They're highly trained technicians. We've got parts people in every one of those 27 locations that make sure that we've got the right parts in stock on time to keep our shops and customers up and running. We have highly trained salespeople that make sure that our customers have the right products for the right application at the right time. And of course, we have management teams all around those that help lead and inspire those people. So 1,200 people from coast to coast. It's great to be here because this is kind of the centerpiece for Energy East. And when you think Energy East, you think here, and then you think about St. John, New Brunswick, and we got the premier of St. John, New Brunswick. We happen to have 3 branches in New Brunswick, so it's good to kind of connect the dots from east to west on that, or from west to east. So, again, thanks for letting me tell the story about how important the oil and gas and the pipeline business is to Brandt. And we just wanted to share the story how committed we are to the province. You know, when you think about Gavin and Sean Semple and their commitment to the province, their commitment to the business, their commitment to the oil patch, it really is a remarkable story. None of that matters, though. If we can't put pipelines in the ground, none of that matters. And at dinner last night at the Red Barn, Sink, I did have all 5 pieces of that chicken, by the way, that you said to order. I did have all 5 pieces. Fenton, I think, summed it up best. We talked about everything last night at the Red Barn. We did. We talked about salamanders. We talked about family pictures when we were 18. We talked about lots of things, but I think Fenton summed it up best when he said, wouldn't it be neat if we could give our kids the same opportunities that we had when we were entering the workforce? And I thought that was a great way to sum it up. So, Sink, thanks for letting us thanks for letting Brandt have a spot at the podium, and thanks everybody for letting us tell our story. Thanks, people.
Thank you so much, Don. That was fantastic. Our next speaker I'd like to invite to the podium is Ray Orb. Ray is the president of the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, SARM, and has served as both director and vice president. Ray is a member of the executive of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and is a Cahir of the FCM Rural Forum, and has a position of the National Municipal Rail Safety Working Group. Ray is currently the Reeve of the Rural Municipality of Cupar.
Thank you, James. Honored guests, Ladies and gentlemen, this morning when I left Cupar, which is about 2 hours from here, my wife asked me if I was wearing my brand jacket. It was a lucky guess. This is a tribute, I think, to the many sponsors that SARM does have, a great Saskatchewan company and actually with local ties to Regina, even better. So I'm pleased to be here in Moosomin this morning to lend our voice to the important issue of pipelines and resources to our province, and as president of the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, that's the last time I'm going to say that, it's SARM from now on. We represent all of the 296 rural municipalities in this province, and I can tell you that they all have a vested interest in pipelines and resources, and I'll give you some facts in just a minute. So the issue that brings us here today, of course, is the issue of the resources and the pipelines that affect our rural communities in so many ways. It affects things like agriculture, it affects our infrastructure, our environment, and our municipalities' bottom line. We all know that our economy depends on the development of oil and gas projects for economic growth, for investments, and for jobs, which are largely based in rural municipalities. So our RMs, of course, are home to many natural resource sector workers and business today that really benefit our RMs and our province. According to the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, Saskatchewan produced over 485,000 barrels of oil per day in 2017 alone. We've got approximately 7 billion barrels of crude oil, which is a lot, and 9.5 trillion cubic feet of natural gas remaining. In 2015, RMs in the province received $86 million in taxes from pipelines. And I don't think, honestly, a lot of people in this country realize this is just one province of Saskatchewan. All across the country, according to the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association, their members paid $709 million to municipal governments in property taxes in 2015. Linear taxation is an important revenue stream for RMs which the pipelines pass through, especially in oil-producing regions like Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's agriculture industry relies on the ability to move product efficiently and cost-effectively. And although this rail transportation has been an issue for our Western Canadian producers, especially in Saskatchewan, the increase of oil by rail raises many concerns, and I can say that I've heard those concerns all across this country, especially in Quebec, which is a bit ironic. With thousands of barrels of oil on rail, not only does this reduce the capacity for grain, but also poses a threat for the environment. Pipelines, of course, are environmentally favorable to road and rail transportation and should be used wherever possible. I think we all know that. And we do know that oil and rail competes with grain, potash, lumber, and all of the other manufactured goods that go out of this province. I want to touch very briefly on the history of the Navigable Waters Act, and I don't think too many know. If there are people in here that are on or were on RM Council, they know what I'm talking about. But part of the legislation that's being looked at that's related to Bill C-69 is the Navigable Waters Act. And if you've ever heard Sinclair Harrison, who is a past president of SARM, talk about this, it has to do with ancient, I believe it's ancient because it was passed not long after this nation became a country. It has to do with the canoe passing on a stream and being able to go through a culvert or under a bridge or under a roadway. And the federal government now, with these proposed amendments, are actually going to inhibit, if they pass, they will inhibit what municipalities do, not only in Saskatchewan, but all around the country, by increasing the regulatory burden and added extra costs and delays. And the list goes on and on. We can actually prove that, and we've proved that to not only the House of Commons standing committees, but the Senate standing committees. And so to our celebration, I guess, in 2012, the federal Conservative government made some amendments to that act and made it more municipality friendly. And they actually lowered the costs, and we're very happy that the federal Conservatives did that. But now, of course, the new Liberal government is looking at changing that again, and we're not happy about that. So what we're doing is we're saying no to the federal Liberals on this, leave that bill alone, and we're saying no to the Prime Minister of Canada as well. And on the issue of the Environmental Impact Assessment Act in Bill C-69, we're saying exactly the same thing. We're saying no to the federal Liberals, no to the Prime Minister, and we really believe that if that bill passes the Senate, we will never see another pipeline built in this country, and you can bank on that. So we do have concerns about the bill, and particularly how it will affect Saskatchewan and Canada. And we really feel, listen, we've done a lot of talking on this issue all across the country. We've met with all of our provincial municipal associations. We have many of them on site. We've been really working hard through FCM on this issue. And we feel that we've been heard, but we have not been listened to. And that, of course, is a big difference. And we're pleased that Senator Batters is here today, because I know she's one of the senators, and she'll probably tell you that she was actually pushing, she was actually pushing to get the standing committee that's dealing with this bill to come out to Western Canada to listen to the people that are on the ground that actually know what the problems are. So I just wanted to mention one more thing, and that's because there is a duty to consult with First Nations, and I mean no disrespect to First Nations when I say this. We feel that that process is adequate, that we have in place. We don't think we need to do any more consultation. We all know what the issues are. We need to get these pipelines approved, and we support not only Energy East, but Kinder Morgan as well. I was out last summer, I was actually in Cole Harbour, in Vancouver, and I saw the Kinder Morgan pipeline. There already is a Kinder Morgan pipeline. All we're simply doing is increasing the volume that's going through it. I don't understand what the issue is, but I think in the days ahead, we're going to hear more about this. So I'd just like to thank you again for the kind invitation. I'd like to thank Sinclair for doing such a great job organizing this, and thank you for allowing SARM to be a champion of this Western Canadian value. Thank you.
For our next speaker, I'd like to invite up Mike Strachan, the SUMA VP of Villages. Mike was raised in Torquay, where he continues to live with his wife, Christy, and their 3 children, Mason, Reese, and Chloe. He's been the mayor of Torquay since 2009 and currently works at the Westmoreland Coal in Estevan. His past work experience has been in farming and oil industries. Mike is also a member of the Torquay Fire Department, and Mike has served on many boards and believes that small communities are the backbone of a strong province.
Good morning. It's good to see so many people here today. As James said, I'm Mike Strachan. I'm the mayor of the village of Torquay, in Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association, Vice President for Villages, Resort Villages, and Northern Communities. SUMA represents 440 municipalities in Saskatchewan. That's cities, towns, villages, resort villages, and northern communities. And Moosomin is one of those members, and I'd like to recognize His Worship, Mayor Tomlinson. Thank you for having us here today. So you might not see a lot of resource extraction in your hometowns, but you can certainly feel the strain on the local economy when resources are not moving. Being the mayor of a small village that has resource development happening around it and working in the natural resource industry myself, you certainly notice the benefits that come when resources are moving. People are working, spending money in our restaurants, using the local post office, putting money in the credit union, supporting all those other businesses that we have in our communities. And that tax base in our communities is very stable, and it benefits all of us. At the end of the day, quality of life for our residents is something we at SUMA want to have. Without enough pipeline capacity, we have to rely on rail to transport our oil to market. It's expensive, it's slow, and there are more risks to our hometowns through spills, derailment, and fire. And I really want to repeat that because that's lost in the discussion. Our hometowns are at risk when we transport oil by rail through spills, derailment, and explosions. We also see these hometowns struggling to keep residents as oil companies find new places that are less expensive to transport their product. And our workers follow them. Our hometowns shrink as all of us have to make do with less. Shrinking communities and shrinking local economies also have an effect as most hometowns rely on volunteers and donations from businesses and local residents to help maintain that quality of life we've come to expect. From helping to fund the local playground to equipment for the local hospital. As these workers and jobs move, so do the ability for hometowns to fund everything their residents want and need. That's why SUMA members proudly supported a resolution in 2016 calling on the federal government to support construction of the Energy East pipeline, and why we continue to lobby for that today. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of SUMA, and I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I think I just want to, echo that sentiment. If you care about prosperity, people, and the environment, you shouldn't oppose Canadian energy infrastructure. We build the safest pipelines in the world, and we should be proud of that, and we should have our access to tidewater. Next, I'd like to invite up MLA Blaine Peterson. He's the Minister of Growth, Enterprise, and Trade. Blaine has served as MLA for Midland since 2007 and was elected to his third term in 2016. Blaine has over 30 years of farming experience in cattle and grain operations, and he understands a strong agricultural sector. He understands a strong agricultural sector is vital to the Midland constituency. He's been active in many livestock organizations, including the Manitoba Cattle Producers Association, the Feeder Cattle Finance Organizations, and the Field Shelter Belt Planting Management Group. Please welcome up Blaine Peterson.
Thank you, James, and good morning, everyone. It is great to be here, such a large crowd on hand. We certainly appreciate you taking time out from your day to be here. And certainly from my Manitoba colleagues, my Saskatchewan colleagues, municipal people, we're here to show our support for you and your industry here today. So I bring greetings from Premier Brian Pallister and our progressive conservative government in Manitoba. I only have very brief greetings. I appreciate most of you are standing here, so we're going to get to the main event very shortly. Just I should explain Growth, Enterprise, and Trade, my department. In that department, I have labor, economic development, mines and petroleum, and tourism. So I understand, our department understands the importance of the oil sector there. And our government certainly understands the importance of the oil industry, both in southwest Manitoba and Saskatchewan and certainly all of Western Canada. And I also want to add that interprovincial trade is important, and that's why Premier Pallister has been leading the charge on reducing these trade barriers that we have between our provinces. Sometimes it's harder to trade between provinces than it is to trade export. And Bill C-69 does not just affect the oil industry. In Manitoba, and I should say, first of all, it has an effect on all the Canadian economy, but in Manitoba, it also affects more than just the oil industry. Manitoba Hydro, we have a bit of a surplus power issue in Manitoba, thanks to our predecessors, but the hydro industry, or the transmission of that power is going to be affected by Bill C-69, and we know how that affects the oil industry when we can't get power transmitted to those sites. We also have a flood mitigation project in Manitoba. We're going to build a flood mitigation project between Lake Manitoba to Lake Winnipeg to relieve the flooding that happens in that interlake area. Bill C-69 threatens the very safety of those people that we are trying to help, and this does not make any sense at all. So you can count on Manitoba for support for your resource sector, for interprovincial trade. We're here to help you. We're here to make sure that we can make substantial changes in the industry, and we're here to build a stronger Canada. So thank you, each and every one of you, for all that you do for Canada.
Thank you, MLA Peterson. If I could ask you guys a big favor, if you guys could all slide to the left just to make some room along the side there, that would be fantastic. Yeah, just don't be shy, just everyone slide down. I know. And then, we just need some access along the side. Everyone comfortable? So next, I'd like to invite your MLA from Moosomin, Stephen Bonk, to the microphone.
Welcome to Moosomin constituency. What a logical place to have a rally like this. Moosomin constituency is a bit of a microcosm for the entire resource industry. We have oil, we have gas, we have mining, we have pipelines, and as you can see, we have world-class manufacturing here. It's because of these, yes, please. It's because of these industries, the economic development they bring, the international trade that ensues, that I got into politics. And it's my distinct pleasure to introduce three people who someone this morning told me it was the Holy Trinity in the fight against the Trudeau carbon tax. I'd like to invite them to the podium. The Right Honourable Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan. Blaine Higgs, the Premier of New Brunswick. And the Right Honourable Andrew Scheer, the Leader of the Official Opposition. Once again, a round of applause for our carbon tax fighting trio.
Hey, Blaine, how are you doing? How are you? Great. I'll give you this here. Thank you so much, Steve. And let me just say this before I get going, how well represented you are in this constituency within our provincial Saskatchewan Party caucus by Stephen Bonk, and I want to thank him for what he does each and every day in representing you in this industry. Welcome everyone here today. Welcome to our municipal leaders from across Western Canada and the nation, and good morning. Good morning, and I tell you, I am so very honored to be with you here today. What an incredible crowd, and thank you so much to all who had a hand in organizing today's event. It truly means a lot to this industry, this community, this province, and this nation. And I want to thank political colleagues from across Saskatchewan, my colleagues across the nation from the Senate. I, in particular, want to thank the leader of our federal opposition, Andrew Scheer, for what he does each and every day. And I want to thank and welcome to Saskatchewan a good friend of mine, a friend of the province of Saskatchewan, and a great Canadian, the Premier of New Brunswick, the Honourable Blaine Higgs. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any better place in the entire world to have a rally for resources than Moosomin, Saskatchewan, Canada? This is most certainly a community that encourages and celebrates the growth of our economy, our Canadian economy, that is driven by energy, driven by mining, manufacturing, and agriculture. And there is opportunity in Moosomin and the surrounding area because of those industries, because of our resource sector, because of what happens every day in businesses just like this one here. iJack Technologies, a new company building on Saskatchewan's reputation in energy and innovation. Dan McCarthy, thank you so much for hosting us here this morning, and thank you so much for what you and all the people that work with you do each and every day for our Canadian economy. My friends, it's time for us to stand up for our resource sector, for Canada's economic future. The fact that you are all here today on a cold Saturday morning, I think, speaks volumes. It tells me that in this province and in this industry, that we quite simply have had enough. Because for far too often, you, have been excluded from a conversation around developing our Canadian resources and our Canadian economic future. For far too long, this conversation has been dominated by those who disapprove of how you and myself and our neighbors in this province make a living in our communities. And for far too long, our voices have not been heard. The voices that are being heard are the voices that would shut down our oil and gas industry, they'd shut down our mining industry, and they'd shut down modern agriculture as we know it. And the moment has come in the nation of Canada. It's time for us to begin to push back, and we need to push back pretty hard. It's time for us to push back against a federal government that isn't listening to us and just quite simply doesn't get it. A federal government that is moving forward relentlessly with policies that are destructive to our economy, to our communities, policies that are driving investment out of Moosomin, they're driving investment out of Saskatchewan, and they're driving investment out of our nation of Canada. And the message that we are here to send today is that, then send it loud and clear, is that it's time for all of us to stand up and defend our world-class, our wealth-generating, our sustainable energy sector here in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a regional issue. This is not a Saskatchewan issue. This is not an Alberta issue. If it was, we wouldn't have the leader of the federal opposition, Mr. Scheer, here today. If it was a regional issue, we wouldn't have the Premier of New Brunswick in this building, in this province, in this community today. So today we are sending a message. This morning we are sending a message on behalf of all Canadians, from Moosomin to Barrie, Ontario, to Fort St. John, New Brunswick. And this message is about our Canadian future. All of Canada benefits from the sustainable, responsible production of our natural resources. All of Canada benefits from what you do in your job each and every day. Everyone, every single Canadian has a stake in this. Ladies and gentlemen, when commodity prices plunged in 2014, we expected the federal government to open up the conversation about how we can cushion the blow to this ever so important industry, to our economy and our communities. And this was not an unreasonable expectation, for sure. We certainly did not expect them to get in the way of an impending recovery, and that's precisely what has happened. at the worst possible time, just as commodity prices were recovering. Our Prime Minister Trudeau introduced Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Bill. In Canada, we already have one of the most stringent review processes in the world, and considering the effort that was undertaken by the proponent of the Energy East pipeline to make sure that it was meeting each and all of those environmental obligations, and I point a few out. In Quebec alone, TransCanada deployed nearly 100 environmental specialists across the route. They collected data from hundreds of waterways, plant ecosystems, wetland locations, animal and bird habitat. They did this for more than 3 years to begin the approval process of that project. They held over 130 open houses, talked and consulted with 7,000 landowners, 755 municipalities, and more than 150 Aboriginal organizations. A thorough process without a doubt. They changed the route of Energy East due to those consultations in more than 700 locations. Folks, we don't need an overhaul of the federal environmental review process that we have. We have a very thorough process that does work. What we need is a federal government that supports our resource industries across this nation. Unfortunately, what we have is a federal government that's pressing forward with Bill C-69, and just the conversation of that bill, not even the introduction in the House, but the conversation of that bill, caused the proponent to walk away from Energy East through an energy corridor that would connect our provinces of New Brunswick and Saskatchewan and Alberta and make life better for all Canadians. And for a moment, when we think about what we lost when TransCanada backed away from Energy East, think about what we lost as a nation. It would have boosted Canada's GDP by $55 billion, while creating thousands of jobs in virtually every province of the nation, in Saskatchewan and Alberta, but also in New Brunswick and every province along the route. A project that would have meant so much for this community of Moosomin. A major terminal was planned for this community. This community would have served as the on-ramp for crude oil from Saskatchewan and Manitoba that would move through that pipeline to refineries in New Brunswick. Energy East was a project that would have meant so much, not just to our province, but to the province of New Brunswick. And I know Premier Higgs is going to talk more about that in a minute, but I want to tell you this today. The people of New Brunswick, the Premier of New Brunswick, and us in this room, and us in this province, and us in this nation, we share so much common ground on this nation-building energy corridor project. With Northern Gateway dead and buried, with the Trans Mountain expansion slowly dying a slow death by strangulation, it's crucial that we have the conversation about revitalizing an energy corridor to Eastern Canada. And in the days ahead, you are going to see that we are going to work together with other premiers to engage Canadians on how we might move forward with this vitally important project. Ladies and gentlemen, Canada has the third largest proven oil reserves in the world. We have clean, sustainably produced energy, yet we import oil each and every day into this nation because we aren't able to build these energy corridors. The federal government says no to big oil tankers on the north coast of British Columbia with shuttered Northern Gateway. They say yes to big oil tankers coming into the province of New Brunswick from Saudi Arabia, bringing oil for Canadians to use. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I know it doesn't to you in this room. This is but one of the challenges that our federal government has laid in front of the industries that we have here in this province. We have tougher federal methane regulations coming down. We have a federally mandated phase out of coal, for coal-fired power generation that has the ultimate impact of losing jobs here in Saskatchewan. Of course, we have the infamous carbon tax that I have a lot to say on from time to time, but I'll just say this, it's a policy that doesn't work, doesn't reduce emissions, it reduces jobs in our province and in our community. And we have a federal government that is trying to impose it on you and the rest of the people in this province. And we spent this last week in court saying that they couldn't. And I am hopeful for the outcome of that. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are dealing with a federal government that just simply doesn't get it. A federal government that doesn't understand our industries in Moosomin, Saskatchewan, and I would say across Canada, and it doesn't understand how we support our families in these communities. A federal government that doesn't understand that in Canada, we are developing resources. We are adding value to these resources in the most efficient and the most environmentally sustainable manner in the entire world. They don't understand this, but I know we do. So I say with you, to our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the federal Liberal government in Ottawa, if you're wondering again how far we are going to go to stand up for Saskatchewan and Canada's resource sector, just watch us, you're going to find out. It brings me great pleasure today to introduce a true friend of mine, a friend of this province, and a friend of the nation of Canada, an individual that has worked most of his life, as many of you in this room, in the energy industry. He can relate to the challenges that we are going through in this industry in Saskatchewan because they are experiencing very similar challenges in his province of New Brunswick. I introduce to you a great friend of our province, not Prime Minister. That's next. We just about changed the speaking order or gave Blaine a promotion. The Premier of New Brunswick, the Honourable Blaine Higgs.
Very good. I've only been here, 8-10 hours, and I'm going for promotion. Yeah. This is great. You know, it feels like home already. And I wondered, when I first got in this job a few months ago, and any of you that were watching New Brunswick politics, it was a long haul to get here. And we have the dubious distinction of being the first minority government in 100 years in New Brunswick. So it's going to be fun. But listening to your Premier here, I realized, he's my new best friend. When I have a daughter that recently moved to Moose Jaw, and yeah, well, that's right. She married a local Saskatchewan resident, and I'm going to see them tonight. And at the time, I said, well, who do I know in Moose Jaw? And who do I know in Saskatchewan? Well, I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people that think just like I do, and it's great to be here today. So I want to thank you. This shouldn't be necessary. But it is. It is, and we've been busy working all our lives, and I've had different people say, well, how can we make a change? And the change is that people have to take time out from their everyday job to make a difference and make it happen. And that's what you're doing right here, and that's why I flew halfway across the country to be part of it. It's fun to be here with so many colleagues, federal, provincially, and locally, and it's what's going to change the game. And you say, well, why did I come all the way from New Brunswick? I did spend a little time in the oil and gas industry, 33 years to be exact. And so I know how it's worked, and I know what it takes to be successful, and I know how hard people work in the industry. So when I see our resources not being utilized, and I see an 80% reduction in the commodity pricing for oil reserves that we have right here in Canada, it's a national issue. When I went to Montreal a few months ago with my colleagues, and I found it wasn't even on the radar for a national discussion. And here we have an issue that affects our transfer payments all over the province, all over the country. Now, Saskatchewan is a net contributor, and I'm hoping to be in that sense at some point. And I'm humbled by the generosity that I've seen throughout Canada and the generosity I see in the western provinces. But I'm not taking it for granted, and that's why I'm here to fight with you to make it happen and make a difference. one day, I want New Brunswick to be a net contributor for a province that needs our help. So standing up for New Brunswick. Now, what do we have in New Brunswick? Some of you have come from here because we had a potash mine that I've met some colleagues here today that are from the Sussex region because our mine isn't running at this point. I'm hopeful one day it will open up. But the idea, we have the largest refinery in Canada in St. John, New Brunswick. 350,000 barrel a day refinery. And guess what it refines? Foreign crude oil. At least 70–80% of it's foreign crude oil. And what does this do for us here? It displaces 50, 100,000 barrels a day of foreign oil. Now, what is wrong with that picture? There's a problem if we can't make that happen and connect those dots. So, you know, when I read the T-shirts about the world needs more Canadian oil, New Brunswick needs more Canadian oil. And what do we have there along with these ships coming and going? The largest tankers in the world have been calling at the deepest water port in the country, in St. John, New Brunswick, for over 40 years. It's a way of life for us. Bringing oil into St. John, into New Brunswick, is not a new thing. It's been going on for years. I spent a career in both the refining and transportation business. And I can talk at great length about what it takes in terms of running those operations, as many of you can talk about the experiences you've had. Well, that's what it takes to make it happen. And that's what's exciting. And the only people that don't understand it right now is we can't seem to get it across to the federal government, but we have a future prime minister here that's going to get it across to the federal government. I am convinced that across this province, as we unite, across this country, as we unite one province at a time, people are going to get on board. So we see it growing. We see it growing from New Brunswick, we see it growing in Ontario, we see it growing in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and we see it growing obviously in Alberta. So we have one little place here that we need to grow on. But you know, I'm saying, Quebec, we need your help. We need you to help us make our country strong. We need you to be part of the solution. That's our goal. So it's not about finding our differences and spending our time focusing on that. It's about finding the issue that binds us and that creates our province and moves us forward. And when we talk about an energy corridor like the railroad many years ago, it's that infrastructure that we support one another on. It's the infrastructure that makes us stronger than any other nation. And it's holding the values that we cherish. Hard work gets results. Using what you have to make it prosper gets results. So it's not about more talk. It's not about more focus. It's not about more committees, more legislation. It's about more doing, getting the job done. Let's get her done. So I'm going to continue to be an advocate across the country from poor little old New Brunswick, because we're done being little old New Brunswick. We're done being a stranded asset on the East Coast. We have a lot to be proud of in our province, and I ran on fighting for New Brunswick. After a 33-year career in the private sector, people say, why are you doing this now? Well, sometimes I question that too. But when I come to rallies like this, and I see real people fighting for a real country, fighting for a real economy, wanting to make a difference for the next generation, it excites me. It makes it say we can go harder, we can be stronger, and we can get results. Thanks so much to Moosomin for putting this on. The new business that's here is created. It's exciting. Thanks for letting me be part of it.
Wow. I think we should revive Energy East. I don't know about you guys. Our next speaker that I'd like to introduce is Senator Denise Batters. Senator Batters is an experienced lawyer and mental health advocate, a lifelong resident of Saskatchewan. She holds a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Regina and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Saskatchewan. Ms. Batters was admitted to the Saskatchewan Bar in 1995 and was in private practice in Saskatchewan until 2007. She was appointed Queen's Counsel in 2008. From November in 2008, from November 2007 until 2012. She was the Chief of Staff of the Saskatchewan's Minister of Justice. Stephen Harper appointed Ms. Batters to the Senate in January 2013. And currently, Senator Batters is the Deputy Chair of the Standing Committee on Internal Economy, Budgets, and Administration. She has been a member of the Senate's Legal Committee, the Rules Committee, and the Senate Communications Subcommittee since 2013. Give the Senator a round of applause.
These guys are all very tall. Conservative leader and leader of the official opposition, Andrew Scheer, Premiers Moe and Higgs, legislative colleagues, distinguished guests, fellow Saskatchewanians, fellow Canadians. I am so proud to be here with you today, this fantastic crowd, despite the bitter cold outside, to support our Western oil and gas industries. We're here to send a message to Justin Trudeau and his crew in Ottawa. Saskatchewan stands united against your job-killing carbon tax, against your inaction on pipelines, and against Bill C-69. That Bill C-69, it's impact assessment legislation that will decimate our Western resource industries and cripple the Canadian economy. I can't overemphasize the impact this legislation will have on Western Canada, including right here in Saskatchewan. People in our region are already hurting. Since 2015, the oil and gas sector has seen more than 100,000 job losses and financial losses of more than $100 billion. Oil is selling at a deep discount. Pipelines like the Energy East pipeline, which should have been built not far from Moosomin, is stymied by the Liberal government at every turn. Investment in the sector is drying up due to uncertainty and overregulation. Workers, their families, and our communities are suffering. Now more than ever, Saskatchewan needs steady leadership and a commitment to ensuring our resources flow to Tidewater. That leadership isn't going to come from Justin Trudeau. He's more concerned with selfies and, right now, damage control. He's more concerned with that than expanding pipeline infrastructure. His attention, fleeting as it might be, is instead devoting to strong-arming his Attorney General and subverting the rule of law in order to enrich his friends and serve his political interests. Trudeau's Liberal government sits on its hands, focused more on appeasing anti-development interests to support their own political fortunes in the next election, rather than addressing the economic crisis facing a major engine of our Canadian economy. And now the Liberal government has introduced this disastrous legislation that will cripple the resource industry further by creating so much uncertainty and spiking so many projects that investment will freeze and Canada will be unable to compete in the global market. Canada's resource industries are the lifeblood of not only Alberta and Saskatchewan, but the entire Canadian economy. We need Canadians to understand the extent to which Western oil and gas industries benefit all regions of Canada. You know what the Energy East pipeline would mean to the Moosomin area, and Premier Higgs has told you how important it would be for New Brunswick. And for every oil and gas job in Alberta, 7 manufacturing jobs are created in Ontario. The West contributes billions of dollars in equalization to Manitoba, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Our bountiful region also provides much-needed jobs for Canadians across the country, from BC to Newfoundland, and all provinces in between. The resource industry is also the biggest private sector employer of Indigenous Canadians and brings jobs to Canada's remote and northern communities. This resource crisis and Bill C-69's impact on it should concern us all. Bill C-69 needs more than just minor tinkering. This terrible, almost unfixable piece of legislation requires an immediate and comprehensive overhaul. How did the Liberals get this legislation so wrong? They have Ralph Goodale, a minister from Regina, sitting right there at the cabinet table. It just serves to illustrate showing up is not the same as stepping up. Time and again. Time and again, Ralph Goodale, Saskatchewan's only Liberal MP, has failed to stand up for Saskatchewan when it matters, on Bill C-69, on the small business tax changes, and on carbon tax, to name only a few. But there is strong federal leadership from right here in Saskatchewan that's willing to fight for you, for our province, and for our resource industry. Conservative leader, Andrew Scheer. Andrew and our entire Conservative caucus have been fighting hard against this anti-pipeline bill and the Trudeau government's attack on Canada's resource sector. Our Conservative MPs battled this devastating bill in the House of Commons, and now our Conservative senators are fighting it tooth and nail in the Senate. As a senator, one of my most important responsibilities is to represent the views of the people of my province of Saskatchewan, including during the consideration of legislation. That's why I'm here with you today, fighting against Bill C-69. But the Trudeau-appointed senators are choosing Justin Trudeau's political interests over the interests and livelihoods of the Canadians in their own regions, including Saskatchewan. Justin Trudeau's so-called independent senators all voted in agreement with the principle of Bill C-69 at second reading, including those senators he appointed from Western Canada. Remember the names of these senators. In fact, why don't you contact them and suggest they reorganize their priorities? A few senators right here in Saskatchewan could use a call, like new Trudeau-appointed independent Senator Marty Klein of Regina, who just published a pro-C-69 article in the Regina Leader-Post, but he conveniently neglected to mention that he voted for Bill C-69 at second reading. It's almost as though he doesn't think that would go over well in Saskatchewan. His fellow independent senator, Saskatchewan Senator Pamela Wallin, and Liberal Senator Lillian Dick also voted for Bill C-69 at second reading. Shamefully, Senator Grant Mitchell of Alberta, the Trudeau government's Senate whip, is the sponsor of Bill C-69, a bill that takes aim at the very resource industries that sustain our western provinces. Senators Paula Simons and Patty LeBoucaine Benson, new Trudeau-appointed senators from Alberta, also voted for Bill C-69 and against Alberta's economic interests. Meanwhile, independent senators Doug Black and Elaine McCoy from Alberta were both absent for the second reading vote. Conservative senators are not confused about our priorities. Neither is our leader, Andrew Scheer. My Conservative colleagues in the House and Senate vehemently oppose C-69, as well as other Trudeau government legislation that will hamper Canada's resource sector, such as Bill C-48, the anti-West Coast tanker bill. Bill C-69 is now being studied by the Senate Energy Committee, but it was only because of pressure from Conservative senators and Canadians like you that this Senate committee will now travel across Canada to hear from Canadians face-to-face on this vital issue. Saskatchewan Conservative Senator Dave Tkachuk, who is our Bill C-69 critic, insisted that the motion allowing the Energy Committee to travel must include the requirement that the committee would have to travel to Western Canada, Eastern Canada, and Quebec. Because if Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government can't hear the concerns of ordinary Canadians all the way over there in Ottawa, Conservatives are happy to take the show on the road and turn up the volume. We are fighting every day for you, the people of Western Canada. We know how vital the oil and gas industries are to the workers, families, and communities of Saskatchewan and Alberta and Manitoba. That is why we are fighting for pipelines and resource development, and we are fighting against Trudeau's costly do-nothing carbon tax. Ottawa needs a dose of good old Saskatchewan common sense. Don't you think it's about time? don't you think it's about time Canada had another Prime Minister from Saskatchewan? Let's make sure we elect a Conservative government this year and help Andrew Scheer send Justin Trudeau and his activist anti-Western Canadian policies packing this October. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. And now I'd like to welcome to the stage my Conservative caucus colleague, Member of Parliament Larry Maguire. Larry has an extensive background in the agricultural sector and served for many years as a provincial Progressive Conservative MLA in the Manitoba legislature. Federally, he has represented the riding of Brandon-Souris since 2013 and has a proven record of standing up for Canada's oil and gas sector. Larry's constituency has the highest oil production in Manitoba, and he is a champion for new pipelines. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome MP Larry Maguire.
Thanks very much, Denise. It is a real pleasure to be here today. I just want to say to my leader, premiers, fellow MLAs, His Worship, Senator, industry dignitaries that are here today as well, industry resource people working in the field, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here today. There's a couple of roles that I have. One, to bring my own support for the industry that's, as Denise just mentioned, that's going on. I have all the oil in Manitoba. Well, Dan Mazur back here has about 10%, our Conservative candidate in Dauphin Swan River and Ipawa now as well, but so we'll work together on that, Dan. I also want to say that the other kind of fuel is, I have to mention this, that we're still in the petroleum industry here. Len Islison, MLA for Brandon East, drove me out this morning. Len, it's good to see you here as well. And so you use some of that fuel. The other kind of fuel is, and I want to thank all the sponsors that are here today because, you know, it's important that we have fuel to run all of us as well. And I want to thank Greg Crisanti from Tim Hortons for bringing the coffee out this morning and supplying it as well. I see a lot of t-shirts here. I love oil and gas. I've got my own at my chair. I've got some of them in Ottawa. I love pipelines as well. And it's not that we love oil and gas and pipelines. We're doing this because we love Canadians. Canadians are what we're We've got to put this together and get it together so that we can continue to contribute to the economy so that more people can go to work. And that's the bottom line for me and all of the developments that we've done in this. And I appreciate the comments here by earlier where they said, you know, let's get these pipelines built. But my job here today, the second job I have here today, is to bring to you a greeting from your Member of Parliament here in Souris Moose Mountain, a very good friend of mine. We share that border from the oil side of it as well, in Brandon-Souris with Dr. Robert Kitchen. And I'm going to read you the message that he asked me to present to you today. Dear friends, it is with sincere regret that I am unable to be there with you today as you gather to show support for Canada's energy industry and all those who work tirelessly within it. I am so proud to represent a part of Canada where our natural resources, especially our oil and gas industry, are celebrated and recognized for the important contributions they make to our economy. Each and every one of you here today is making a difference simply by being present and showing your support, not only for Saskatchewan, but for all Canadian energy workers. Our natural resources are the backbone of this country, and I know that myself and my Conservative colleagues will continue to stand up and represent all of the hard-working Canadians who have been treated unfairly by the current Liberal government. In turn, I encourage all of you to keep up with this momentum and keep making noise. You are being heard and your efforts are recognized and deeply appreciated by many. I'd like to thank the Leader of the Official Opposition, Andrew Scheer, the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, and the Premier of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, for taking the time to be here today and show their support for our energy workers. Thank you as well to my Conservative colleagues who continue to fight for our energy industry in Ottawa. Most importantly, thank you to all of you for coming out today and for the important work that you are doing in standing up for our energy sector. Together, we will work hard towards a future where our energy industries and those who work within it can get the support and respect that they so clearly deserve. Thank you from Dr. Robert Kitchen. So, ladies and gentlemen, the other auspicious role that I have today, and a very pleasant one as well, is to introduce our special guest. Andrew was first elected in 2004 when he became the youngest, first person elected as Speaker of the House of Commons in Canada in 2011. He was elected leader of our Conservative Party of Canada in 2017. He's doing an excellent job holding Justin Trudeau's feet to the fire. So, ladies and gentlemen, the leader of Canada's Conservative Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada, we'll get that one in there, Joe Scott, Andrew Scheer.
Well, thank you very much for that warm welcome. It is such a pleasure for me to be home in Saskatchewan, this wonderful province, in front of so many people here today. And I want to thank Premier Higgs. I was in Fredericton earlier this week. We had a great turnout there, and I can tell you that the support for Canada's energy resource sector, the workers that pay their bills, that raise their families, thanks to this very important industry, is very strong in Atlantic Canada. I want to thank him for his leadership in fighting for this industry in his home province. I want to thank Premier Moe as well for being here and for leading the charge against so many of the terrible policies that have been enforced and imposed not only upon this province of Saskatchewan but the entire country. You know, it wasn't too long ago that at the provincial level there was only one premier standing against the carbon tax. And Saskatchewan has that badge of honor that it was always our province leading against that fight. But we've got reinforcements now. We've got reinforcements, and Premier Higgs is leading the charge now in Eastern Canada, Atlantic Canada, against this terrible policy that's going to make life more expensive for everyone. You know, I know that Canadians are paying for Justin Trudeau's mistakes on so many files, and Canadians are tired of paying the bill that he's leaving them. Whether it's the massive deficits that are leading to higher taxes, whether it's his inability to control wasteful government spending, Canadians are paying for his mistakes on so many files. But there's one area where he's doing significant damage to our country and our economy. But he's not doing that by mistake. His attack on Canada's energy sector is by design. It's on purpose. This is the one area where he's doing exactly what he said he would do. He has talked down Canada's energy sector for long before he became Prime Minister. And my message to you here today is that Canadians deserve a Prime Minister that is proud of the work that you do, that will champion Canada's energy sector and not talk it down. Justin Trudeau went around Europe telling his friends at fancy resorts and gatherings of famous people that he was frustrated that he couldn't phase out Canada's energy sector faster. Well, I'm here to tell you that I will travel around the world promoting Canada's energy sector as a source of ethical and responsible and sustainable energy around the world. This industry is hurting. I know that. We hear it all the time. We see it when we're home in our communities. Your federal representatives know that there is a great deal of difficulty, a great deal of anxiety in this province, in Alberta, and in the sector across the country. We know that. We get that. We're fighting to undo the damage that's being done to you. You know, in Saskatchewan, we often face a lot of hurdles. You have to be made of special stuff to make it here in this part of Canada. Mother Nature doesn't just give it to you. You know, you gotta work a little harder. You gotta get that crop off a little quicker before the frost hits. When we have natural resources, sometimes we have to innovate to get them out of the ground. We have to find new solutions to tackle the hurdles that have been placed in our way. But what really hurts, what really stings, is when those hurdles aren't coming from external forces. They're not coming from market developments in other countries. They're not coming from natural causes. They're coming from our own government. When it's our own government that's making it harder to make a living, that's what really gets people in this country angry and fired up. And people in this province, you know, we're not interested. In this sector across the country, we're not interested in Justin Trudeau's offers of bailouts, of extra funds to mitigate the damage from his own policies. We don't want that. We don't want more government assistance. We want Justin Trudeau to get out of the way so that we can keep doing what we've been doing for generations in this country. Now, a lot of people ask me, okay, well, under a conservative government, how are you going to get pipelines built? How is a conservative government going to build pipelines in this country? And the first thing I say to that question is, government shouldn't have to build pipelines in this country. The private sector, the free market, has always built them, and we don't need government to do it. We need government to set the conditions so that energy proponents can do what they've been doing for decades, and that is build themselves. We need to make sure that the goalposts stay in one spot and don't just keep moving side to side and back and forth. We need to have Justin Trudeau to stop playing the role of Lucy, pulling the football away from the energy sector every time it lines up to kick the ball. And when he buys the pipeline, you know, he bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And we found out this week he overpaid for it. He paid almost $1 billion more than it was worth. Can you imagine having a prime minister negotiating with a company that had already decided to pull out of Canada? It was desperate to dump an asset and put their resources into the US. And Justin Trudeau paid more than the sticker price for a pipeline that he can't even build. I have no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt that in the days to come, we're going to find out that not only did he pay more than the pipeline was worth, but he probably bought the extended warranty as well. But you know, it's not funny when you look at the damage that his policies are having on the workers, the people in this room, the people who are looking for work, the people who are worried about how they're going to keep their house, the small business owner that has for generations supplied parts or services to this industry that feeds so many families. There's a lot of anxiety when they know that in the coming months they may have to let some of their people go. There's a lot of anxiety when they know that it's going to be a struggle to make payroll. When we see that the insult that's added to the injury, where many of those companies are selling off rigs, selling off equipment to American companies who are taking that Canadian equipment, taking the Canadian tax dollars that Justin Trudeau wrote on your behalf and investing in the energy sector in the United States. That's frustrating. That angers me. I know it angers you. It's frustrating when we see people blocking the export of Canadian energy. When we see people lying down in front of bulldozers or tying themselves to a tree to prevent exports of Canadian energy that's extracted at the highest environmental standards, where the profits go back into the Canadian economy, supporting public sector pension plans and the retirement savings of Canadians in every part of this country. I get very frustrated about that myself, blocking Canadian exports of responsibly and sustainably developed natural resources. But I don't see them lining up and down the St. Lawrence, blocking tanker after tanker of foreign oil bringing energy from countries like Saudi Arabia, Algeria, or the United States into this country. So we're going to get these pipelines built so that Canada Canada can become self-sufficient when it comes to energy, so we don't have to import oil or gas from anywhere in the world. We can develop it right here in this country and keep those consumer dollars right here at home. We're going to do that by undoing the damage that Justin Trudeau has done to our approvals process. I have a comprehensive plan that stands up for federal jurisdiction, declares these projects to be in the national interest because of the benefits that it provides in literally every single region. And my plan will make sure that decisions are made by Canadians. It is time that we end the practice of allowing foreign-funded advocacy groups from blocking and standing in the way of these projects. We're going to repeal Bill C-69. If it passes, we're not going to let it pass. This bill, I won't cover all the ground that everyone else has covered. You already heard why it's so terrible for this industry. We're going to get rid of it. Job number one of a Conservative government after the election this October will be to repeal the carbon tax, ladies and gentlemen. And don't let anyone call it a price. Don't let anyone call it a price. You know, we know that a price is something that the market sets, that you choose as a consumer whether or not you want to pay, that is set by things like supply and demand and the cost of production. When the government assigns a cost, forces you to pay it, and collects the revenue, that is a tax. It is a tax every day of the week. It doesn't matter what they try to call it. It's a tax. We're going to scrap it. It does nothing to reduce emissions. It does nothing to reduce emissions. We know that the Liberals are planning to raise it even higher. Internal documents from the government's own officials indicate that they are contemplating a $300 a ton carbon tax, driving up the cost of literally everything, making home heating more expensive, gasoline, groceries. We're not going to let them do that. We're going to repeal the carbon tax as job one. Now, we know that there is an opportunity this October to undo this damage. We have in our party a great group of individuals, people with expertise, people from the private sector, people who know this industry so well. We are going to undo the damage that Justin Trudeau has done to this sector, and we're also going to offer positive solutions. An environmental plan that recognizes the innovation and the steps that our energy industry has already made. The gains that Canada has made, whether it's from agriculture to manufacturing, to respect our environment so we have an even cleaner Canada to pass on to the next generation. But we're also going to take credit for what Canada does so well. There's no point that we don't do the planet any favors if we drive away jobs and investment and we see production and manufacturing close down in Canada only to pop up in other countries without our same standards. We don't benefit the reduction of global emissions if we chase away those jobs and investment from Canada just to see them start up in China or India where they don't have access to the same clean technology or the same clean electricity that we have in this country. Our environmental plan will capitalize on the gains that Canada has made, incentivize reductions in emissions, and stand up for the energy sector that meets those standards every single day. So we're going to keep fighting the fight all the way to October. I want to thank all of you for being here. And as was said, as Premier said, it's too bad that this rally had to happen. You wouldn't have to have these types of demonstrations, these types of gatherings, if you had a government that believed in you, if you had a government that respected the work you did. My commitment to you is that from now until October, we will fight against these terrible policies that Justin Trudeau is imposing upon Canada and the sector. And come October, after forming government, we will start to clean up the mess that he's left us. I believe in the work that you do. I recognize the contribution you make to this country. I celebrate the fact that there are so many families that have been able to go to school, to raise their kids, to own a home, thanks to our natural resource sector. I will never go around the world talking down Canada's energy sector. I will go around the world opening up new markets, championing Canada's energy sector so that the world gets more Canadian energy, more Canadian oil and gas, not less of it. Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure to be with you here today.
Isn't that the case? More Canada is a better world. So true. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the Mayor of Moosomin, Mayor Larry Tomlinson.
Thank you very much. Before I say what I have to say, I would like to invite Barry Lowes, the Reeve of the Arma Archie Ellis from Manitoba, to come up and speak on something that was a bit of a disaster this morning I think everybody should know about. So Barry, if you'd like to come forward. And
thank you, Larry. When I got up this morning at 5 o'clock to feed my cows, I did not think I'd be on this stage. But I welcome and thank all these people that have come and all you guys that have spent the day here. It's very appreciative on this cause. 5 o'clock this morning, I get a phone call from my fire chief in St. Lazare. He says, there's been a train derailment. Our greatest fear down there, because it goes right through the edge of town. Anyway, it was about 5 miles south of town, and it was a long train. I don't know how many cars there'd be there, but anyways, right in the middle of it, there's 36 cars derailed. And our biggest fear with all this not having pipelines, it was full of oil. So when I got there, there's hazmat, there's backhoes, it's just tremendous amount of people they've pulled in there in a short period of time. They're trying to contain it all. They got air quality specialists there. They got water quality there. It is not very far from the Assiniboine River. I can't tell you how far it is, for sure, but it's running downhill. So they're sure trying to contain it. But anyway, it's a huge spill. I talked to the CN guy. He's doing his very best. He's got people coming from everywhere to help. So figured 24 to 48 hours they should have her cleaned up and the train will be going again. But anyway, I said when I got up this morning and I heard this, I said, what are the chances? We got two railways that go right across Canada, the full length. We have a rally, a pipeline rally in Moosomin, 30 miles from this site, and we have a train derail, and lo and behold, it has oil on it. Like, what are the chances? Anyways, some of the firemen are here that work there, and they seen it firsthand, and we'll be there helping them, trying to get through it all. And anyways, we got to do it with them, so we'll cooperate to our best of our abilities. But anyways, I'd like to thank everybody and just bring you up to speed. When you hear, I have a friend over here, he texts me and he says, make sure it's not canola oil. It's not canola oil, Louis. Thank you.
again, hello and welcome. It's a proud time to be the mayor of Moosomin. Wow, what a turnout. Thank you very much for coming. This is more than just impressive. On behalf of the Council of Town of Moosomin and all the surrounding RMs and everybody that helped, I wish to sincerely thank all the dignitaries that have come from near and far today. Also, a huge thank you to all supporters that are here today. This rally is not just to represent our local trading area and our community, it's for all of Canada. We also only hope today is only the start of the citizens of Canada could see the benefit of pipelines. Our goal is that the Senate of Canada reject Bill C-69 at the Senate level to allow projects like Energy East to continue. So people of this country have access to the Canadian oil which supports Canadian families and the Canadian economy, rather than importing natural resources that we already have here and so fortunate to have. In closing, I wish to thank the volunteers who have put a lot of hard work and time into making this rally a success. If there's any other community that wants to do something like this, I'm sure if you ask for our support, we'd be willing to do whatever we could. Thank you everybody in coming today. Show your support. Please have a drive safe home. And thank you very much for coming. Also, when this is finished, there is free burgers at the back. Everybody's welcome to stop. They're no charge. They're supplied by local farmers. And thank you very much again.